Thank you, and once again, welcome to the Carter Sports Network. I'm your host, Wes. We're going to go over the games tonight. We had the Lakers versus the Clippers, and we had the Sixers versus the Bucks. Again, the first week is always an exciting time. I remember a few years ago, DeMar DeRozan was going crazy. I think he was on Toronto, and he was, I think, the first 8 or 10 games, he was averaging like 30 every night. Again, yesterday's game or day before yesterday, opening night, he had another 37-point game. So this initial time of the NBA season is always just exciting. We get a chance to really see players really with their desire, having not played for months at a time. You get to see people really put in effort and put in work. And for other teams as well, like, if your season is ending and is going to be terrible, people generally are just going to turn their backs quickly, going to be frustrated, and we get to see some of that here. But without further ado, here we are. We're talking today about the Sixers and the Bucks. This was a very entertaining game. There was a lot of good things to see on both sides, but in the end, Bucks end up prevailing with the final victory after the shot made by Wes Matthews from the driving kick from Grayson Allen. That was an interesting game. I was watching just to see how things are going. Real quick thing that I noticed, and I had it on my mind, but I did a little research on it just to verify. The Bucks are now 7-2 versus the Sixers in the last 9 games. So overall, they're really dominating their matchup against them. One of the things that's happening right now is that the Sixers don't really have a matchup for Giannis, so he gets to mostly do what he wants to do. He isn't really exerting too much effort. But at the same time, the Bucks have a great matchup for Joel Embid. Brook Lopez is a big guy. He spent the beginning of his career averaging 20 and 10. He's later in his years, I think in the last 5 years, really developed into a decent three-point shooter. So he defends the paint well. He shoots the three, stretch the floor. Even if he's only shooting 35 or 37% from the three-point line, he's doing a great job just for the fact that he's drawing another team center away from the basket. Embiid has to respect him when he goes out to the three-point line, which opens up driving lanes for everyone else. Some things that I took down and we're just looking at today was Sixers were mostly at full strength. They had just about all their players. Anyone who's really going to be in the rotation was available today, and they ended up still losing. For the Bucks, though, the Bucks were actually missing Chris Middleton. They were missing Pat Connaughton, and they were missing Joe Ingles. All three of those guys are 6'8". They're all good shooters. They're all decent. They're all pretty good defenders and can all handle the ball as well. So a game like this where you're playing and you're giving your best effort as a Sixer. It's early in the season. You're really trying to show yourself to be on par with the best teams in the conference. You lose, and they're missing 3 pretty impactful wings that will make huge impacts for them in the playoffs. So that's something that I took away just from the box score right away. Again, we talked about Embid, Giannis. We talked about Embid with Brook Lopez. Drew Holiday, we know he's a great two-way player. He today only had 6 points, so largely because he's chasing around James Harden and Tyrese Maxey. That's generally you're not going to see him score 6 points. He's going to average 15, 17, 18 points a game. And as Chris Middleton comes back, as they are able to add people from trades or from signing and different things like that, he'll become more efficient and be able to play in a better role. Just in terms of depth for the Bucks, 9 players from the Bucks played at least 15 minutes, which helps a lot. So in these games where you're going up against the conference's best, you generally want to show that you have trust. And what happened is in this game, Doc Rivers really showed that he doesn't really trust a lot of the players on his bench. On the other side, the Bucks end up having Again, 9 players play 15 minutes. Only 7 players from the Sixers play 15 minutes. I did a lot of different things that I wrote about, but didn't talk too much about Giannis. This was it was a pretty efficient game for him, but also a pretty average game. He had 21 points and 13 rebounds, some assists and different things like that. But generally, in these moments where it is very crucial for the victory, Giannis normally go to 35 points. He'll normally get 18 rebounds. So this kind of showed that, like, although he was playing hard, I don't think that overall he was really pushing himself to what is it that he can go to. I remember during LeBron's peak when he was taking over different places, he would give just enough energy depending on the opponent. When he was playing in the playoffs, the first round, he'd probably average 25, 27. Then the second round, he pushed that to 28, 29. And by the time he got around to the finals and he knew he only had 4 games or 6 games to go, he would begin averaging, like against the Warriors, averaging 30-point triple-double. Giannis is kind of moving into that phase right now where he knows exactly how much energy he needs to spend. So instead of him giving him his all, he knows ahead of time that when he plays Joel Embiid, he's going to dominate the matchup. Joel really doesn't have the ability to keep up with him up and down the floor. Again, tonight I was watching a bit of lumbering again for Joel as he's getting up and down the court, but overall he's going to be able to score some points. Embiid is really too talented for him not to, but he just can't make the overall impact that I think his team needs in those moments. The season just started. You have another 80 games to go, and nicks and bruises are going to start piling at some point. And by the time the playoffs arrive, with Doc Rivers only playing 7 people over 15 minutes, bodies are going to be more tired. In terms of the Sixers, the one thing is that Thybulle, their 6'8" wing, he's an all NBA defender, didn't play any minutes tonight. And the first thing you would say, how is it possible that this guy's been on the team for 3 or 4 years? He's proven himself to be a great defender, and he can't get any minutes in a moment where you need to guard one of arguably the best player in the NBA. So I thought that was a bit of a head scratcher there. They played a bunch of guys who were older, Daniel House and different guys like that. But there's no real reason why Thybulle should not be playing, especially this early in the season. Embid, he finished 6 for 21 tonight. Again, having Brook Lopez, that's a bit of an issue. In many other matchups, he's able to bully other team's center. He can go around them, but Brook creates the perfect blend of immense size and then just enough foot speed to be able to shift left or right when Embiid is going his way. And whenever he doesn't able to completely shut off Embiid, Giannis is on the backside roaming for a possible block. So this is always generally a bad matchup for Embiid, and we see that currently in the record of how they've done overall. James Harden looked great after a rough season last year and the last 2 years. He came into the year a lot trimmer, more ready to play. And something that he's done, in the past few years, he had been shooting either straight to the basket or threes. But in this game, he was doing a lot of mid-range pull-ups, which is something that I've always hoped that he would be able to do more. So that will add a element to his game. He's a good shooter for the most part across the floor. This will help definitely in the playoffs when you're not able to get as many buckets at the rim. At this point right now, James, he played well, but one of the things that really set him apart during his MVP runs, where he was averaging 30-plus points a game, was his ability to get to the free throw line. That's now diminishing a bit. So while he is able to score his points, one of the big things of what made him who he was his ability to get the other team into foul trouble, and that's no longer happening as much. So while he's getting his points, teams are no longer sending that extra help. It's just more of just one-on-one person on the island, which is not allowing as many driving kicks as it used to be. James Harden, again, he's done so well in the regular season that is no longer something that people focus on. while this game was great, his true worth and what is it that he is going to be able to accomplish will be focused largely how he does it in the playoffs. If he succeeds, then this would be a victory for him. But outside of that, he's just going to be, you know, Tracy McGrady type, where you score a lot of points, but no one really remembers anything you've actually done in history. Tyrese Maxey is going to be a great player for them. His speed is really game changing for that overall team. The Sixers overall don't have a ton of foot speed. You have PJ Tucker, you have James Harden, you got Tobias Harris. Maxey brings just a burst of energy, and you see that every game where they're rebounding the ball, they kick the ball ahead to Maxey, and he's 1-on-1 or 1-on-2, and teams are struggling to contain him because his speed is just different. So with that, as they are implementing that and they're growing and trying to figure out how to best maximize their team, they're learning very quickly that Maxey is becoming a player that they can really count on, and he doesn't look to be afraid of the moment at all. He's ready to go at all points, and he's put in the work, improved his jump shot a bit, and he's really taken to his relationship with James Harden, kind of taking him as a big brother, and James also taking him as a student under his wings. The Sixers still have to play the Heat, the Nets, Cleveland, and the Sixers, in my opinion, are likely going to finish between 4th and 6th in the Eastern Conference. It's going to be, like, what's going to happen is the first few weeks is a lot of, like I said before, it's a lot of excitement. There's a lot of hope and optimism. But as the season wears on, I think I think the Heat, the Nets, the Bucks, and the Celtics will eventually separate themselves from the Sixers. The Sixers just overall don't have a ton of of upside. They don't have a lot of the 6'8", 6'9" wings that you would need in these moments. And then at the end of the day, again, you have Doc Rivers, and he's done a great job. He's won a lot of games, but in these moments against the Eric Spoelsers of the world, against the Boston Celtics, generally you expect that he won't be able to stand up in terms of coaching against those guys. The X's and O's won't be as good as his counterparts. And when you don't have the overall size, when you don't have the overall team speed or athleticism, and you're losing in the coaching battle, it's just a hard thing to overcome overall. So for that reason, I think I have the Sixers finishing between 4th and 6th place in the conference, and we'll see how that goes from there. Tobias Harris tonight had 9 points, 4 of 10 shooting, 1 of 4 from 3. And my initial opinion is that while it looks good, they should do their best to trade him away for a 3-and-D wing. It's at this point right now, they'd be better served. Like he's doing his best. He's really committed to the role that they have given to him, kind of like a 3rd or 4th option. Catching a lot of threes and shooting from the corner, but it's still not the fullness of his game. He could possibly do better. We'll see how that goes. But having PJ Tucker starting as your small forward at 37 years old, hoping he plays 82 games for the regular season, and then also plays another 16 to 20 something games in the playoffs is going to be a lot to ask of a 37-year-old guy, which is all the more head scratching why Thybulle wouldn't play at all in this game. You have to think longer term than just this one game, and that's not what the Sixers did today. So when you think about the best players in the conference, you have I was writing down this, just thinking about who, in terms of playoff matchups, who would I rather have. So my list of Eastern Conference players would go in not in any particular order, but I'd have Giannis, I'd have Durant, I've had Jimmy Butler, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, and then likely Embiid after that. So the Sixers, again, when you're looking at the best players, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you probably had the 6th best player in terms of playoff performance on the Sixers team, which lets you know, again, if your team isn't perfectly constructed and you also don't have one of the five best players in the conference, it can just be difficult overall just to get that top seed um, to overall continue to advance when you don't have the best player on the floor. So these are some things that I'm looking at for the Sixers. The Bucks, I expect them to get better. Adding 3 6'8" high level rotation players is going to only increase the overall ability of the Bucks. While they're waiting for Chris Middleton to get back, who was their second leading scorer, their overall go-to player in the clutch. The Bucks they'll do fine. Giannis he pretty much without trying, he's going to impose his will on most teams. They'll beat up on bottom feeders and be able to get a decent record while they hold out for his return. The Sixers overall, like it's the Eastern Conference is a lot deeper. So, if there's any reason that Embiid continues to struggle, if Harden isn't able to play at this level where he's averaging 30 points a game, there could be some slippage again from the Sixers, and everyone's kind of locked in. Embiid's got a few more years. Harden just signed an extension. I think he's a player option here in a year or two. But it's things could get changed quickly. There's mid season if you're 500 or you're a few games above, you can start seeing people talk about Doc Rivers and see the right coach. What else can you do possibly to help to salvage the season? The second game that was on tonight was the Lakers versus the Clippers. This was an exciting matchup. I think most people kind of expected how the ending would go. Overall, the Clippers' talent would just be too much for the Lakers. But something that I looked into and I heard said at the end is that the Clippers actually have 8 consecutive victories versus the Lakers, which lets you know that this last stretch of time, these last 3 years or so, have just been dominated by Kawhi and that team. While Kawhi himself hasn't played a ton, the Lakers just haven't had the talent to really compete with the Clippers. Some things that I looked at from the Lakers standpoint, LeBron still looks great. He played well. He got up and down the court a bit. He's shooting a lot more threes now. Again, is expected. Year 20, he's getting older. Just trying his best to get points, conserve energy, and just continue on as best as he can. He had, I believe, 20 points tonight. Just didn't really have it overall. Anthony Davis played well. He looked good for the most part throughout the game, but he just isn't the same player that he was when he was in New Orleans. This is a decent player. He's a little bit above. He reminds me at this point like of a DeAndre Ayton kind of thing, where he's a good player, but yeah, you're always hoping for a little bit more. He provides good defense and everything else, but just the overall hope was he would, if he's not Giannis, he would be somewhere in the stratosphere, and he isn't. He's more in that DeAndre Ayton type of camp right now than he is towards Giannis. Lonnie Walker came over from the San Antonio Spurs in the free agency, and he has been a great pickup for them. You see it immediately. His athleticism and overall size at the shooting guard position really jumps off the screen. It's unfortunate that they're starting Westbrook, Walker, and Pat Bev all together. I think it'd be a lot better for the overall team if they had Pat Bev and Lonnie Walker starting and hopefully some kind of small forward. The Lakers really need a 6'8" wing to take up that spot, but it's currently being occupied by Westbrook, which is ideal. Westbrook tonight had a really rough shooting night. He was 0 for 11 from the field, 0 from 6 from 3-point line, and finished with 2 points. So you're playing minutes. You have him starting, and it's really I don't really want to sit here and bash Westbrook. His game is what it is. He was an unbelievable athlete in the beginning of his career, able to really impose his will for the most part on the team guarding him. But he's still athletic, still one of the most athletic players in guards in the NBA. But he has definitely lost a step or two in terms of his athleticism. And as you lose that athleticism and you don't really fill out your game anywhere else, you become mostly he should be a bench player at this point right now. Like he would help his team greatly. He could be Dennis Schroeder. I mean, when Dennis Schroeder gets back, he's going to add athleticism. He's going to add, getting to the basket. But Westbrook just overall just isn't willing to accept that kind of role. So as a result, he's kind of just left out here in no man's land where he's playing and nobody really wants him to really be out there. But the Lakers overall just are at a talent deficit for the most part. They were down for a while. They made a big run while Westbrook was on the bench. Lakers had only 4 people who score over 5 points. That's going to be difficult to win. That's putting a lot of pressure on your 2 stars. And after the Lakers championship in 2020, during that time period they had a plethora of role players. Kyle Kuzma, they had Caruso, they had a bunch of different players who played defense and were able to get a shot for themselves for the most part. At this point right now, it's mostly AD. You have Lonnie Walker a little bit, and then you have Westbrook, who's able to get their shot. So it's a rough place where the Lakers are right now. Look up, and there's no really anyone else that's really coming to help, unless the Lakers are willing to trade a pick. The one thing that's good is that teams are going to be tanking this year just due to the Victor Wembanyama sweepstakes. So hopefully they can get someone in earlier than the trade deadline, maybe the 20th game or something, while they still have a chance, and that way they'd be able to inject some talent into the overall roster. But right now they just don't have it, and asking LeBron at age 38 to average 30 points a game on efficient shooting and be decent enough on defense is a little bit too much to ask. This team, but many of their players, from maybe the 4th player down to the 10th player, would have a difficult time getting in many rotations around the NBA. So you're asking older players to play with players that wouldn't really have playing time on any other team. Juan Toscano-Anderson was pretty much benched by the end of the year on the Warriors last year, and he's getting major minutes for the Lakers. So you just see the overall talent deficit in terms of those teams. The Clippers had 8 people score at least 8 points. The one thing that everyone lauded them for was their depth. They have player after player after player. If Kawhi and Paul George miss 10 games in a row or something, they have enough players that they can still have basically a playoff roster, even without those 2 players playing large minutes. John Wall was supposed to get traded for Westbrook last year, but it never happened. But he had a great game off the bench today. He came in, he provided athleticism, he provided leadership for that second unit, and you get to see a lot of what he is going to be able to add to the team. It's crazy because they also the Clippers got him for nothing because he agreed to a buyout, so he was able to sign for them for nothing. These are the kind of signings that you hope, as a Laker fan, you would hope would come your way, but everything is right now falling towards the Clippers, and the Clippers have, they're able to make trades still as the trade deadline is coming. They can consolidate a few of those players and possibly get themselves another B-level player if needed. So they have a lot of different options, and we'll see how that goes. Paul George himself, he had a rough night, 4-15, didn't really play well. Kawhi came off the bench for the Clippers, and they're having something where they're saying they're trying to conserve his minutes and to try their best to prepare him for the longer season. But overall, it was a victory for the Clippers without their 2 best stars playing like stars. I think no one scored over 15 points for the Clippers, and yet still they were able to win and lead throughout the game very comfortably. So this is going to be an interesting time. We have some games on tonight, Friday night. We'll look to watch those and give some updates on that and see where it goes from here. But there's a lot of good teams that are playing. There's a lot of good talent around the league, and we'll get to see just who is ready to take that next step. How the overall roster was constructed for teams, and if it's able to handle the long season and then be the grueling uphill battle of the playoffs. We'll talk a little bit more about that in the future. If you're new to the channel, please like, share, and subscribe. Bringing you updates mostly daily on terms of NBA games, and we'll see how it goes from there. So thank you so much for your time, and have a good night.